Hey folks, welcome back. Have a really neat product here. This is the brand new RadioMaster TX12 Mark II. Version 2 of this radio. About 2 years ago they released the TX12. Obviously they didn't call it a Mark I because that would be insane to do that. The V1 had a multi-protocol module in it. It was great for connecting to your D8, D16, FrSky models and all that stuff. But the Mark II brings something new to the table. This one has Edge TX and ExpressLRS built into it from the factory, out of the box, ready to rock, with no modules hanging off the back of it. Yes, it still does come with the standard full-size JR base, so you can run whatever module of your choice you want in this radio. And this is a complete package. This is everything you could possibly want in a radio. We've got 4 3-position switches, 2 momentary switches, lots of buttons, and a metal rolly click wheel, and a partridge in a pear tree. Internal charging, internal ExpressLRS. Works great for Sims, has the Bluetooth wireless connectivity for using Sims. I don't recommend doing that. The latency is terrible, but that's not their fault. Then mention we got sliders. We got sliders, and we've got all the trim switches you could possibly want. This radio is feature-packed, Hall effect gimbals, you name it. The transmitter transmits at a maximum of 250 milliwatts. On ExpressLRS 2.4, 250 milliwatts can get you an awful long way, especially if you have a properly mounted and installed receiver antenna, and you know, you're doing all the right things as far as RF works. You can go a very, very long way on this new breed of 2.4 gigahertz technology with the ExpressLRS built inside of this. Yes, there are modules that go up a lot higher than 250 milliwatts. 1 watt is kind of that's the sweet spot of ExpressLRS, but it does come at a downside, you know, extra battery draw, shorter runtime, and plus usually you got to have a big old dingleberry module hanging on the back of your radio. But for 99% of us, 250 milliwatts is going to be plenty for everything we do. And if you're one of those people that need more than that, you already know that, and you're not watching this video because this radio just probably isn't interesting you. So anyways, let's take this thing over to the bench, crack it open, see what's inside, and see what makes it tick. So as we get into this, I just want to kind of say right off the top, my first time recording this, yeah, OBS did me dirty, changed a bunch of preferences, and I lost all the audio of me talking while I'm disassembling this thing. So I'm just going to narrate it as we go along. First thing you want to do, get the 2 1860s out of there. They just pull out. It's just the regular 2S connector, and then you want to remove the 6 number 1 Phillips head screws from the back of the radio. Once you get those screws out, you got to pop the little bezels off these upper switches. That way the 2 halves can come apart. Pretty easy, just grab your fingernail and kind of pry them up. And then the back cover just kind of comes right off. There's really nothing attaching the front and the back halves together at all. It's pretty easy disassembly. And from here you can get into most of the guts. The battery bay is actually kind of screwed onto the back of the radio, so it's basically 2 separate parts. The folding handle, it's held in by some big herky bolts. No worry about that thing pulling out of the back of the shell. Very well built back half. Now as we get into the inside of the radio, this is the ExpressLRS module here right in the middle. It is the exact same module that's in the Zorro. 250 milliwatts. It's a pretty reliable module. It does draw a bit more current than it should. I don't know if they made an update to it or not. That'll be some further testing I'll have to do. But as you can see on the bottom there are 3 little membrane switches, little momentary buttons that you can use to actually enable the bootloader if you need to flash the backpack, because this does have the VTX backpack function, or if you need to actually get into the firmware itself and do like a manual flash. And as looking around the board, there's no bodge wires, there's no snot ball soldering, there's nothing out of the ordinary here. These boards are built really well, so big old caps on it. The only weird thing is that right there, but that's where the rotary click wheel thing, the metal jog wheel in the front of the radio is mounted, so a little bit of extra heat. That looks like that was hand soldered rather than wave soldered like everything else on this radio has been done. So let's get the module out. All we're gonna do is disconnect the little connector on there, and then it's held in with two 2 little hex screws, and that'll take that module right out of there. And on the back of the ExpressLRS module, there is a pretty beefy little heatsink. It's kind of nice to see it in there. Yeah, it's not going to get a whole lot of airflow being in the back of the radio, but it is basically more capacity for heat to soak into before everything starts to raise temperature. It's a nice little feature. Is it necessary? Probably not. The operating temperature of these chips is actually way higher than you might think it is. And we can see our antenna here is a RP SMA, so keep that in mind if you decide to buy like an aftermarket antenna or like a Moxon style antenna, which do certainly help out a little bit as far as range goes, especially when we're working with the 250 milliwatts that this radio has. But again, another good look at the board. And as you can see, there are actually 11 mounting screws that hold this board down. Some are hidden under wires or the knobs for the sliders, but if you're not counting 11 screws, you're probably missing one. They're all marked with this little screw icon, really easy to see. I'm not gonna bore you with the disassembly. It's literally just pulling out JST connectors and undoing screws. Just be sure you hang on to your screws. If for some reason you're missing a screw, check around your gimbals. These are Hall effect gimbals. They're the exact same gimbals that come on the RadioMaster Zorro. And they have magnets in them, and they will gobble up those screws in a hurry. But another thing to mention is, since these are the same gimbals as the RadioMaster Zorro and they're Hall effect gimbals, that you can actually replace them with the AG01 mini gimbals. I don't think it's worth it. I really don't recommend it. I mean, they're cool looking and all that, but I don't think it's worth doubling the price of the radio for those gimbals when mechanically they're basically the same thing, but they do look pretty darn cool. So here we go, we got the front shell out, and we got the main board out. Main board is, I really appreciate the attention to detail they put into these. All the screw holes are marked, all the pins, all the connections, they're all labeled. Everything has a label on it. They didn't need to do that extra silk screening, but they did it. And it just makes people's lives, like myself, who like to get into these things and tinker with them or change stuff, or even just for doing repairs, it certainly makes life a lot easier. I know a lot of people that get into these radios, they probably don't have the experience that some other people do, and this is a daunting task to get in here, but they certainly make it very clear where everything goes, and it certainly helps in the end. Moving on to the gimbals, tension adjustment's really easy. You just screw this screw in and out to change the left and right tension, and then there's another one on the other axis for doing the up and down tension right there. Very easy to do. Unfortunately, you do have to pull the back of the radio apart to get to these, but I don't think you have to disassemble really anything else to do it. And the tension from the throttle side is removed by adding this screw in there. It kind of pushes down on the tension bar, and it basically overrides the spring, removing the tension. And then you just tighten down the little slider bar, and that adds a little bit of resistance in there. And just showing again that these gimbals are all interchangeable with that of the Zorro, so you can put these AG01 mini gimbals in there. They are pretty sweet looking, but again, like I said, they don't really add any appreciable difference or functionality to this radio. And just like everything else, assembly is a reverse or removal. This radio is not the easiest radio to put back together, just because that scroll wheel kind of wants to fall out every time you flip the radio over. So I found building the radio with the antenna facing down, so gravity kind of held that wheel in place, certainly made life a whole lot easier. But it's just put it back together the way you took it apart, take a lot of pictures. Everything's labeled, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure out where everything goes. Every connector is labeled, which again, it's really nice they did that. Certainly didn't have to, but kind of wanted to do it. Oh man, check out those sweet grips. I put a ton of effort into designing the back half of these grips. Get yourself a set, tweetfree.com. So anyways, as you can see, the innards of this radio are built very well. I don't see any flaws, bodges, weird solder balls, questionable design choices. This thing has actually been built pretty well. And, I gotta say, there's probably, there's only two things I really don't like about it. One is the fact that if you want to charge it, you have to charge it through the battery door in the back. Yes, it has a USB port on the top of it, but that is only for accessing the internal memory SD card and connecting to the computer for simming. The thing in the bottom is ExpressLRS updates if you need to use USB, which you shouldn't have to. Wi-Fi updates work just fine. And charging. It's nice, it has built-in charging, but it is kind of annoying that you have to pop this door open to charge it. If I was going to keep using this radio, which this isn't going to be my daily driver, just, you know, full disclosure, not my daily driver, not my cup of tea, I would probably take a Dremel and cut a hole in there, but that's kind of the way I roll. Actually, probably 3D print a new door that has a gap in it to plug a cord in, and then save this one for, you know, when you go to get rid of it. But that is complaint number one, and complaint number two is that the 18650 bay is much more spacious than the V1 radio, and because of that, the battery does bounce around a lot inside the cavity. Easy fix by just jamming some foam in there or something, but that is a double-edged sword because it is such a large bay, you could theoretically get a monster 2S lithium-ion pack, maybe a 2S 2P pack, jam it in there, and run this thing for days and days and days and not have to charge. I get questions all the time like, hey, what radio should I get when I'm getting in the hobby? So the two things you want to spend your money on are your goggles and your radio, because those are the two things that potentially are going to stick with you the longest. And up until this point, my number one recommendation for anybody who really didn't know what they were doing and wanted to get into the hobby was this one, the RadioMaster TX12, the first version, the multi-protocol module, because this radio can do it basically all. And then with the external module bay, you know, sky's the limit on what you want to do. But nowadays, FR Sky, D8, D16, all that stuff, in my opinion, it's all kind of dead. We probably shouldn't be focusing on it anymore. We should be going with the better protocol, the open source protocol, ExpressLRS, and this radio ticks all the boxes. The ergonomics are okay. I don't really care that they brought the grips all the way down. Unlike the old radio, this one I feel fits my hand better, but then again, it's just my hands. They're a medium-large hand. I just like the way that one feels, just a little bit better. But as with all radios, getting some of my Tweed FPV grip tape on your radio does make every radio feel better. The two best radios out there for someone who's budget concerned and wants the best value for their dollar are this one, the RadioMaster TX12 if you want a traditional style radio, or the RadioMaster Zorro if you gotta have that gamepad style radio. I prefer this radio myself. It's just, I like the gamepad style. It's small. I don't like the big long switches. I like the little short ones on that radio, and I don't know, that one's comfortable to me. But if anybody asks, what radio do I get? It's this one. Number one top recommendation. This radio, I see really no faults with it. Do you have this radio? Do you like this radio? Are you planning on switching whatever radio you have to this run? And if so, which radio are you getting rid of? Kind of curious. I've flown basically all of them, all the major radios in this hobby, and I like this one. This one, 2 big thumbs up. All right, folks, thanks for coming by. Thanks for checking this out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you want to get yourself some grips, go to tweetfv.com. And if you want to support me, you can go to Patreon and subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month. If my videos entertain you, bring you some sort of value, save you money, whatever, consider subscribing. There's some benefits there. Go to the page, you'll see what they are. All right, folks, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. And as always, stay positive. I'll see you next time.